I understand your squeamishness, the natural feel of dread. You may think it's demonish to animate the dead, but truly 'tis a sacrifice that I make for my art. For greater would you pay the price, should I not do my part. The dead I've learned to animate in pieces and in whole, so that my skills may calibrate the taking of the toll of the spells, which draw from plains rife with strength beyond your ken, where shadows live and death survives. You would not comprehend. Talking skulls and a walking corpse, the basics of my art, used so that I might find the force to take them all apart. I pull strings from the tapestry to fray apart the weave, and rend the spell of travesty of magics ill conceived. Destroying creatures such as these is verily my goal. So that the dead may rest in peace, I've lost part of my soul. A short reading from Necromancer's Lament. Uh, Blythed and I met when Vlatraka sent me on an errand to Nari's tower. I had been training with her for nearly a year and 9 months by this time, reading intently, doing odd chores, and learning the art of alchemy, tending the garden, and in my spare time, actually practicing magic, which one does not learn much of in the first year. At first, it is mostly exercises designed to allow the body and mind to accept magical energy and a fantastic amount of reading. Latraco was right about the lesson of patience being primary at the start of training, for it was easy to get frustrated at the lack of magic available to me at the beginning. She worked me hard, and I worked myself harder. When I asked about why I had to do menial labor, which took time away from my studying, she commented that keeping the body fit helps it to retain more magical energy. I researched historical wizards to prove her false in the hopes of changing her mind, but it seems that her words have wisdom after all. Even the eldest of mages managed to stay somewhat physically fit, and with some suggestion that magic actually fueled their bodies after a point. I also made a new friend, well, two to be precise. Wizards sometimes summon familiars, a bonded animal linked magically to the wizard, to be both companion and helpmate. Latraco was bonded to Quasel, a small brown bat, and I soon found myself bonding with Cecilia, a short-eared owl. It is difficult to describe the link between a wizard and a familiar to those that have not experienced it, and no need to describe it to those who have. Part of the life force is shared between the two, heightening the senses and, in some cases, physical skills of the wizard, while amplifying both intelligence and magical ability of the familiar. I have learned to cast spells through her, using her as a conduit for my magic, as well as communicate telepathically and empathically with her. The summoning ritual is a full day process, often from sunrise to sunrise, though can be started at any time of the day, wherein the wizard lights rare incense and meditates in a circle of mystic runes. During the meditation, the wizard looks deep into his heart and considers why he wishes to follow the path of wizardry and what he wishes to accomplish as such. At the close of the ceremony, assuming it is done correctly, the familiar best suited to the mage appears at the edge of the circle and speaks its name in a fashion only the wizard it will bond with can hear. The pair then become lifelong companions, their spirits tied to one another so that the familiar lives as long as the wizard does, normally. Should the wizard die from causes other than natural ones, a common occurrence in our profession, the familiar often survives for about a month before passing. Should the familiar be killed, it tears at the mage's spirit, reducing his connection to the weave until his soul heals. A risky endeavor, true, explaining the rarity of its occurrence, but well worth it, for there can never be a closer companion to a wizard than his familiar. My mistress needed some rare components, which her friend had available and assigned me to fetch them. Why do you not send a message using magic? I asked. Or teleport. Either would be much faster than having me travel all the way over there. There are some things magic cannot accomplish. I could certainly send a message using magical courier, and my need is not so great as to use the necessary energy to teleport. Besides, I believe it is time you begin socializing with your fellow apprentices, she smiled. But I have so much to learn here. Time taken away from my studies is time lost, I countered. She sighed. You have so much more to learn than what is in these dusty old books, young Mithron. It's better to have friends and allies than to make your way in the world alone. She crossed her arms. You are by far the most self-sufficient boy I know, and sometimes I feel that you need my library to learn magic more than you need me. She chuckled. But you know how dangerous the world is. It is always better to have someone nearby in case you get into trouble. I thought back on my encounter with the Volzu and shuddered. Very well, I shall make friends with... What is Nari's apprentice's name? Blythed, I believe. Here is the message and a map to her tower, she said matter-of-factly as she handed me the proffered items. I will conjure a horse for you to get you started, but after that, you will need to summon your own. It should take you about 3 days to get there, so I expect to see you by the next quarter moon. Grab your pack and some provisions for the trip, and I shall meet you outside. Clearly, there was to be no further agreement on the subject, or no further argument on the subject. I picked up my spellbook, carried it to my room, and grabbed a thick quilt from the cedar chest. I then went to the kitchen and grabbed my backpack from the hook. After carefully placing my book into the pack, I rummaged through the cupboards for foodstuffs that would travel well: a loaf of bread, some cheese, dried meat, and a bunch of carrots. I also grabbed 2 water skins to keep hydrated. Checked over Latreca's map and saw that there were 2 creeks to ford along the way where I could refill the hardened bladders should the need arise. Rolled up the quilt, tucked it under my arm, and stepped outside where Latreca stood next to a tan and white horse, with the familiar open book marking on its forehead, my mistress's personal symbol. At some point, I will have to develop my own.